Hello everyone. My name is MD Saif Hassananim, and today I will present our work titled Scalability Analysis of Quantum Models for Stress and Emotion Detection. This work is a collaboration among the University of Tennessee, Oak Ridge National Laboratory, and Southern Methodist University. The central question we study is how quantum machine learning models behave when they are scaled for realistic stress and emotion detection tasks. To begin, stress and emotion detection are important because they can support early diagnosis and intervention for psychiatric and cognitive conditions, including PTSD, depression, and Alzheimer's disease. The challenge is that the biomarkers used for these tasks are usually multimodal and high-dimensional. They can include physiological signals, behavioral signals, and other sensor measurements. Machine learning and quantum computing offer new possibilities for representing this kind of complex data in high-dimensional spaces. However, scalability remains a major barrier for practical quantum machine learning. In this study, we focus on benchmarking those scalability challenges in realistic healthcare-oriented settings. The main contribution of this work is a scalability-focused evaluation of quantum support vector machines. We study both binary stress detection and multi-class emotion recognition while increasing the number of qubits. We also compare two-angle encoding strategies, sparse 1-to-1 encoding, where each feature maps to a qubit, and dense 2-to-1 encoding, where two features are embedded into one qubit. This allows us to examine the trade-offs between accuracy, stability, and computational feasibility. Finally, we show that conclusions from small feasibility studies can differ significantly from conclusions drawn under more scalable settings. This slide summarizes the two datasets used in the study. For stress detection, the data comes from Empatica E4 wearable sensors used under the Trier Social Stress Test Protocol. The physiological signals include electrodermal activity, photoplethysmography, and skin temperature. The ground truth labels are binary, stress and no stress, derived from salivary cortisol samples collected during the protocol. For emotion recognition, the data is captured using Shimmer 3 GSR plus wearable devices and camera-based information. The modalities include electrodermal activity, heart rate, temperature, motion, and video. The final labels are positive, negative, and neutral, generated using facial expression analysis. Here we show the overall framework. The process starts with multimodal data sources, including wearable physiological signals, behavioral video, and ground truth protocol information. These data streams are synchronized and then pass through pre-processing and feature extraction steps such as cleaning, filtering, encoding, and dimensionality reduction. After annotation, the extracted features are encoded into quantum circuits. A fidelity quantum kernel is then used to compute similarity between samples in the quantum feature space. Finally, the resulting kernel matrix is used by a support vector machine for classification. This slide explains the fidelity quantum kernel and the two encoding strategies. The kernel measures similarity by computing the overlap between quantum states in Hilbert space. In practice, this is evaluated using a compute-uncompute procedure, where the model estimates the probability of returning to the all-zero state after applying inverse circuit operations. For sparse encoding, each classical feature is mapped to one qubit. This can increase representational capacity, but it also increases hardware requirements directly as the number of features grows. For dense encoding, two features are embedded sequentially into one qubit. This reduces the number of required qubits, but it also increases the amount of information compressed into each qubit. This slide highlights why kernel scaling becomes difficult. The kernel matrix depends on the number of samples, because each sample must be compared against other samples. This leads to a sample-by-sample similarity matrix. The number of features does not change the shape of the kernel matrix, but it does increase the cost of computing each individual kernel value. Therefore, scalability is affected in two ways: more samples increase the number of kernel entries, while more features increase the complexity of each quantum circuit evaluation. The scalability wall comes from classical state vector simulation of quantum circuits. Simulating an n-qubit circuit requires storing 2 to the power of n complex amplitudes, which causes exponential growth in memory and runtime. To study the peak limits, we executed scaled models from 24 to 40 qubits on supercomputing clusters, using Python 3.10 and NVIDIA CUDA-Q for CPU and GPU acceleration. Even with high-performance computing resources, we used a 7-day maximum allocation runtime to avoid out-of-memory failures and early termination. This demonstrates that scalability is not only a modeling issue, but also a major computational constraint. For stress detection, the results show an important trade-off. The dense 2-to-1 encoding with 20 qubits and 40 features did not outperform the classical baseline, but it showed lower variability. In contrast, the sparse 1-to-1 mapping with 24 qubits and 24 features reached perfect prediction metrics in one of the 5 folds. However, this came with much higher variability. The classical baseline did not reach perfect performance in any fold, but it remained more consistent on average. This suggests that higher peak performance alone is not enough, stability across folds is also critical. For emotion recognition, the scaling behavior is class-dependent. The negative class showed improved recall, which may indicate better sensitivity to subtle physiological changes associated with negative effect. The neutral class showed a slight decrease in accuracy under the 1-to-1 mapping, suggesting that intermediate emotional states may occupy a more overlapping and less distinguishable feature region. For the positive class, the 8-qubit 1-to-1 configuration achieved near-perfect performance, including very high precision and accuracy. Overall, these results show that quantum model scaling does not affect all classes equally. This slide contrasts a feasibility study with a scalability study. In the feasibility setting, the hardware profile is small, around 4 to 6 qubits, with 8 to 12 features and only the 2-to-1 encoding strategy. The goal is mainly to prove that the approach works, and the computation can run on a standard workstation. In the scalability setting, the model is expanded up to 24 qubits and 40 features, using both 1-to-1 and 2-to-1 mappings. The goal shifts from basic viability to understanding performance ceilings, variance, and computational limits. This distinction is important because a model that looks promising at small scale may behave differently when pushed toward realistic scale. The core takeaway is that effective quantum machine learning scaling is fundamentally task-dependent. Simply increasing the number of qubits does not automatically improve performance. Instead, the results suggest that careful encoding design matters more than raw qubit count. The right encoding strategy depends on the dataset, the classification task, the class structure, and the available computational resources. Finally, there are several directions for future work. First, the simulation should be extended using current noise models to better reflect realistic quantum hardware. Second, these models should be transitioned from simulation to real quantum devices. Third, multimodal and transfer learning approaches could be explored to improve generalization. Finally, hybrid quantum neural networks may provide a promising direction for robust stress and emotion detection in real-world environments. Thank you.